Now, I'm very pleased to introduce the President of the United Nations Evaluation Group, Marco Segone, for the keynote speech, The Role of Evaluation in Public Policies from Evidence to Evidence-Based Policymaking. Our guest speaker has a long-standing experience in the framework of the United Nations and with specific regard to public policy evaluation. I'm sure his intervention will be of great interest for all of us. Please, Marco.
Thank you very much, Federico, and good afternoon to everybody. And let me start by saying how pleased and honored I am to be here today with all of you. Because I think that we have a lot to learn from each other, and therefore really a big thank you to the organizer and to Federico Toniato in particular for the kind invitation to this meeting. So in the next 10 minutes, I will try to tackle mainly three issues. First of all, a very brief introduction about the United Nations Evaluation Group, and then second, some thoughts about how to enhance the use of evidence in policy making, and then on how to strengthen capacities of parliamentarians in using evidence in policy making. So what about the United Nations Evaluation Group? So the United Nations Evaluation Group is a network of evaluation offices of 48 different UN agencies. You know, before joining the group, I was not even aware that there are 48 UN agencies. In reality, there are more than 48 because those are the agencies that have an evaluation function within the agencies. And it goes from the very big agencies with billions of dollars per year to very small agencies. So the aim of the United Nations Evaluation Group is really to advance the evaluation function within the UN system. And here I would just like to focus on three aspects of the second bullet point. So first of all, we're not doing really research, even if obviously evaluation and research, they have a lot of overlappings, especially when it comes to approaches, methods, tools. But as you know, I mean, research mainly focuses on studying social, political, economical, cultural phenomena in the society, while evaluation focuses more on assessing the performance of an intervention, being a public policy program, etc. And therefore, it really looks at the relevance. Now we're talking about public policies, about the relevance of the public policies, but not only at the, let's say, at the legal framework, but also at the implementation of the public policy. And therefore, it also looks at the effectiveness and the efficiency of the public policies, but also very importantly, it looks also at the impact of the public policies, because as we all know, through the public policies, what we want is to change the lives of people. And therefore, we as evaluators, we really look at what kind of change that public policies has done really in the life of people. And then the sustainability. So these are the five, let's say, famous OECD DAC evaluation criteria that we all use in the United Nations system, and I know that also in the OECD countries, they are very much used. And mainly as the United Nations, we focus on the UN system contribution to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. So just a small reminder here, the Sustainable Development Goals are different from the Millennium Development Goals in several aspects, but one aspect that may be very interesting for you is that the Sustainable Development Goals are universal, are not only for developing countries, are for all countries in the world. As a matter of fact, just to give you an example, the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender equality, there is no single individual country in the world that has met this goal. So it's really universal for everybody, with a particular focus on the no one left behind. And that's something important also for middle-income countries and for developed countries, where disparities and inequalities within a countries are increasing. So the mission of the United Nations Evaluation Group is really to promote the independence, credibility, and usefulness of evaluation across the UN system, and to advocate for the importance of evaluation, definitely for accountability, but not only for accountability, but also for learning and improvement, and for informing decision-making. Now, we have mainly three priorities. One is to strengthen the capacity of the UN system to supply good quality evidence. But the second priority also to strengthen the capacities of policymakers and decision makers to demand for and to use evidence in decision making. And mainly we do that as a group, as a network, through the norm and standards for evaluations. So after more than 12 years, we have updated our norm and standards for evaluations, and that's a way to make sure that the different UN agencies, they produce high-quality evaluations by applying a coherent manner to the evaluation functions. And we also have peer reviews among ourselves. We have competencies for our staff, et cetera, et cetera. Many of the things that I heard from you today. But we also want to strengthen the national capacities for evidence-based policymaking. And this brings me to my second part of the presentation. That is really about what are we talking about when we talk about evidence-based policymaking, including in the post-truth society. I fully agree with Anthony what he was saying today, that probably we have always lived in a post-truth society. However, I think that we now, with the advent of the social media and the application of artificial intelligence and algorithms to the social media, we are experiencing a situation where public opinion is influenced much more quickly and somehow easily than in the past. So when we talk about evidence-based policymaking, we are talking about an approach that helps people make well-informed decisions by putting the best available evidence at the heart of the policy development and implementation. Now, that's the definition, but the real life is a little bit different. And I think that we should not be too naive about that. I think just to try to make simple a very complex situation, when we talk about policy making, mainly we are talking about two elements. We are talking about the capacity to produce good quality evidence, but also we talk about the policy environment. So we know that evidence is only one source of information among many others. We know that in the policy environment, very often policymakers, they make reference to their own practice of the political life in the country, to their own judgments and values, to their own experience, to the resources that are available to implement determined public policies, and also to the lobby system, I mean, to which kind of pressure they get, either by organized lobbies or by opinion leaders, by the mass media, civil society, etc. And based on the combination of these two elements, meaning the capacities to provide good quality evidence and the policy environment, we may find countries that are more kind of opinion-based, countries that are evidence-influenced, and countries that are evidence-based policymaking. I'm not sure that there is any country that is really falling under the evidence-based policymaking, but hopefully the majority would fall under the evidence, at least influence policymaking. Now, this is just to say, as a reminder, that we should always remember that evaluation is a technical process, but carried out within a political environment. So, and that's has always been like this, and probably will always be like this. So I think that as a evaluator, researcher, analyst, etc., we should always be aware of the risk of the political economy of evidence-based policymaking. And mainly to minimize this risk, I think that the best weapons that we have is really the independence and credibility and utility of our evaluation or research function. Now, if we are talking about national policy making, the question is how to ensure that national evaluation systems really are founded in these norms of independence, credibility, and utility. And to do that, we need a systemic approach to institutionalize evaluation in the country. In the past, we have focused very much on strengthening the individual capacities of evaluators to produce good quality evidence. But in reality, we also need to strengthen the capacities of the individual policymakers to demand and use for evidence. In this context would be parliamentarians, but not only parliamentarians. But that's not enough. We also need to strengthen the institutional capacities, to strengthen really the capacity of institutions to produce this kind of evaluation. And we already hear in this Italian Senate, for example, is already moving very fast and quickly towards that direction. But we also need an enabling environment with, for example, a national evaluation policy that clearly states what are the roles and accountabilities of the different stakeholders in the institutional setting. So it's very complex, and that's why no single organization, no matter how big it is, and I would say no single ministry or no single national institution can do it alone. That's why at global level, a global partnership for national evaluation capacity development that is called EVAL Partners was created with more than 50 organizations, UN agencies, multilateral banks, NGOs, universities, etc., to come together and really to try to strengthen national evaluation capacity development. This EVAL partner has different sub-networks, and I would like just take the last 2 minutes focusing on the last one, on the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Evaluation. And let me say up front, the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Evaluation is one of the cases where the Global South is leading, because there are regional parliamentarians forum for evaluation in Latin America, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in South Asia, and in the East Asia, but not in Europe and not in North America. And mainly what these global parliamentarians, so it's not an alliance of parliaments, but of parliamentarians, what they are doing is they are trying to advocate for the importance of using evidence in policy makings, both at the global level. Therefore, for example, both the previous UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon as well as the current one, Antonio Guterres, they already publicly spoke about the importance of using evaluation and evidence in policy making. As a matter of fact, for the first time 2 years ago, the UN General Assembly endorsed the first ever UN resolution on the importance of strengthening national evaluation systems for policy making. But in reality, it's a bottom-up approach. So our parliamentarians that are organizing events in the national parliaments, so we have just been in the national parliament of Kyrgyzstan, but we have also been in the national parliament of Tunisia, Nepal, etc., really to try to strengthen the demand and from parliamentarians themselves, really to demand for evaluation, to demand for national evaluation policies, and to use evaluation in policy making. We are also producing guidances on how to develop national evaluation policies and how to evaluate public policies, etc. And we are also facilitating triangular cooperation, meaning we are facilitating the exchange, let's say, of experiences, not only in events like this one where we bring parliamentarians from all over the world together, but really where there are parliamentarians from a certain countries that would like to take certain actions, and they know that there are countries that have already advanced on that particular aspect, so that they can really support with technical assistance from peers on this. So I hope that I've raised some questions, and if we will have time, it will be my pleasure to address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Segone, for your speech. It was very interesting. Now